snowboard.
Calvin Castine at Olympic Stadium for Hometown Cable, and we're here with a fellow that I first met 18 years ago. Dick Letourneau and I and a fellow named Sherm Blow were here, and a young fellow having his second trip up to the majors had just arrived from the minors. The manager at the time was Buck Rogers, and that fellow was from Whitehall, New York, so we made a point to talk to him. And Dick Letourneau told me at the time, he says, I knew his father. He used to play up in St. John's in the Northern League, and he went on to become a good, strong major league player for a few years. And that young fellow's name was Randy St. Clair, who's no longer a young fellow. In fact, you just had a birthday. This is the 27th, 4 days ago.
Yes. I just turned 23. So.
23?
Yeah.
20 years ago he turned 23, but we won't talk about how old I am, so we won't talk about how old Randy is. Randy, you grew up in Whitehall. Your father, Ebba St. Clair, I went on the internet during the spring and found out there were some baseball card reproductions on there, and I dug those out, and he had what, 3 seasons in the majors, or how many?
I guess parts of 3 or 4 seasons that he played in the major leagues.
Predominantly for the Braves, and he ended up with the Giants?
Yeah, he ended up, his last year was 54 with the Giants when he got, he was hitting the head with a fastball and stuff in the year actually, and it really messed up his equilibrium, and that was his final year. So he didn't get to actually get to the World Series with him, but he was part of that team in 54.
Okay, that was 54. Went against the Cleveland Indians, and that was an exciting year to be there. And of course, in 54, as we well know from several years ago when we talked with Don Zimmer, that was before the helmets, because Don Zimmer became the man whose injury helped push the fact that they went to helmets.
Right.
So your father was hit without a batting helmet up there.
Yes.
He was, from what my buddy Pete Keenan, who we brought along with us, tells me, he was a huge man.
He was a very he wasn't so much tall, but he was very stocky, very heavily built, and stuff. And he was probably about my height and size, but much bigger frame than I have.
So he was a powerful man. In fact, I also found on the internet a poem called "Our Father Who Art at Third," and part of that is it says it's no heaven, it's here, slick skin and stitches of the ball in hand, reminding me of Ebba St. Clair, Atlanta cracker catcher built like cross trees, showing us how to throw the ball, an egg in his knotted roots of his fingers.
That's I've never heard that one before. So
yeah,
I've seen the reprints of the cards because I have the cards. I've had people pick up the original cards, and so I have the cards, but I've never heard the
I'll give you that.
there. So
I found that on the internet. I was quite impressed that this poet decided to. It's kind of like the Joe DiMaggio with Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah, it's kind of big. When I go to Atlanta, there's people that kind of pop up here and there that knew my father, that saw him play down there and everything. So.
Yeah, he was kind of a legend up here in the North Country. He did play for St. John's, wasn't it?
I believe he was under another name. Claude Ramon, who's coach with us also, played, and he remembered my father, and he said he went by the name of Eddie Thomas up here, because I guess when they cross the border, a lot of times they change their names up here and stuff. So he went under, I guess, an assumed name, a different name up here and everything, but he was up here, and he played in the Northern League up here. So.
Yeah. Now let's talk a little bit about your history. You grew up in Whitehall?
Yes, I grew up in Whitehall, New York.
Now, you didn't. Now, I know there's a Whitehall school. They're a Class D school, and I've taped them against some state regional play a couple years ago. But you didn't go to Whitehall School, right?
No, yes, I did.
Oh, okay,
because
I thought in the media guide it said Central High School or something.
Yeah, the media guide's a little messed up.
The media guide is wrong?
Yeah. It also usually lists me as Glens Falls, too, I was born in Glens Falls, but I was raised in everything in Whitehall, New York, attended school there, and actually signed as a non-drafted free agent.
As I recall from what you told me in '85, you weren't always a pitcher. It was your father who decided that if you're going to make it, you should get into pitching, right?
Yeah, well, I was always a catcher in high school, and I did a little bit pitching, but nothing. I was predominantly a catcher, and we went to a few tryout camps, and didn't get signed out of them. So we built a mound in my backyard, and we worked out for about a month and a half, my father and I, and went to a tryout camp and ended up getting signed as a pitcher. So
after a month and a half,
yeah, yeah.
You get I tape all levels of sports, and you get these people with their 8, 9-year-old kids. They think it's so important that they start throwing at that young age, but I'm just the opposite. I think they ought to just learn how to play ball at that age.
Yeah.
And when they get in their teens, maybe learn how to pitch a little bit.
Yeah, it's, I guess it's, there's always been, most of the players that play on this field actually pitched when they were in, because of their arms were so good. So most of them pitch when they don't play shortstop, or they don't play, first base or whatever. They're usually pitchers, and then they play as they go along, they develop into other play.
Well, they don't pitch
positions.
every day, so when they're not pitching, they're playing
right,
one of these
and then
other
they
spots.
see how good they are there, and how so it ends up the other way around. But for me, it was just the opposite.
Now, as a pitching coach, would you like to have a guy like Guerrero show up with an arm like that?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, you look for those arms all the time. Those are hard to find. Great arms, and great arms are hard to find, and if they can develop the feel for command and a breaking pitch, then they become outstanding major leaguers. If they don't, then they have just as much struggles as everybody else.
Now, in the era when you were pitching high school ball, there was it's amazing that there would be 3 people that come out of basically the same area that ended up in the major leagues. LaPointe and Palmer,
yes,
from Glens Falls, were also playing around that same time as you were in high school.
Yeah, they were a couple years ahead of me, but for the 3 of us to come out of that area at that time was pretty remarkable, and hopefully there's a couple more kids that are in that area now that'll make it to the major leagues also.
Now, your brother Steve is his name. He played a little bit of minor league ball.
Yeah, he played a few years in the minor leagues, as well as my youngest brother, Mark.
So you had 3 of you that signed.
Yes.
Now, your father was still alive at that time, or?
He was alive when I was playing. He wasn't for my brother Stephen or Mark. He passed away in I believe it was 82, and I was in West Palm Beach at the time when he passed away. So he never got to see Stephen and Mark play. Actually, he didn't get to see me play either. Every time he came to see me, I never pitched. So he made the trip out to when I was in the New York Penn League a couple times, and never got to see me. So.
Oh, that's awful, huh?
Yeah, but I'm sure he's looking at me, watching me now. So.
Now, you did play. Peter Keenan said he remembers your father from. Of course, coaching. Your father coached at Alsable Forks, I believe, for a while,
up in
the 40s before
yes,
he made the majors?
Yes. I don't know the years that he did coach up there, but yeah, before he got to the major leagues, he did do some coaching up there.
And then when you were growing up, make the American Legion ball for Whitehall?
Yeah, he ran the American Legion and the Little League program there for some years when I was growing up, and we had the Legion team there, and we traveled to Plattsburgh a few times to play there, and of course, all the Legion teams there in the Northeast.
Now, what did he do after he got out of the pros?
He was insurance. He was in the insurance business. So.
Okay. Now you haven't moved too far away. You're living in Lake George.
Yeah, I still live in Lake George. I enjoy the winters, which most people probably don't care for up in this area, but I love snowboarding and I do a lot of hunting, so it's the area is perfect for me.
Yeah, the only time I don't like Lake George is when everybody else likes it, which is in the summer. It's just a tough place to move around in.
Yeah, for me it's perfect. When I get home, Labor Day's passed and everybody leaves and it's nice and quiet and peaceful, and
so
that's the way I enjoy it.
You don't attempt to commute when you're a teacher?
No, I go home every once in a while on an off day.
Yeah, here we are at 3:30. You're just showing up for the day's work here.
Well, I've been here since 1 o'clock, so I mean that's my typical day.
And when I've seen you here, it's your nose to the grindstone. This is your first opportunity at the major league level to coach, and it looks like you're looking to.
Yeah, well,
make the
to
most
me,
of
it's
it.
I've always, I always try to work hard. Not just busy work, but to work hard and to keep things going and to keep working with guys and not give up on guys and watch video with them and do all the little necessary things to try to keep them on track and hopefully make them better. So, and it takes a lot of time, and it's hard to actually work out on the field with pitchers because they're pitching. They may be needed at night and stuff. So it's a lot of talking. It's a lot of dry work and stuff like that without throwing the ball. But we do a lot of stuff, and your day starts early. Most people think, oh, it's 7 o'clock game. You work from 7 to 10:30, and it's over with. Well, we start at 1 in the afternoon, and I don't get done usually till sometimes an hour after the game. When everything kind of settles down, and then you start right back in the next day. So it's a long year.
Yeah. Now, I was very surprised when I read the media guide that we've already proven is not always 100% correct, but the fact that you played 10 years in the majors but never had a complete season. It seemed like every year you...
Well, I was that what you call that 12th, 13th, 11th guy on a pitching staff. I was always that kind of insurance type guy, and I bounced around. It was tough. You had to wait for an injury to happen or something like that, and it's a tough job. But then again, I got in almost 4 years of complete service time and got to pitch in a World Series. So I mean, it was a tough career, but I enjoyed it very much, and I had a great time doing it.
Well, I'm sure there's a million people who would trade places with you.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
They wouldn't mind that bouncing around. But this will be your first full year in the majors, ironically.
Yeah, yes, it will.
Coach.
Well, if something bad doesn't happen, and I get fired tomorrow, but.
Well, I think you must be taking full credit for Livan Hernandez's success.
Oh, I try not to take credit for anybody's success. It's up to them. I can only try to make them better. When they walk across that white line, they're on their own. It doesn't matter what you do with them, what you tell them and stuff. It's up to them, and in the work they do and the mental preparation that they put into it and everything. And he's just been unbelievable this year. I mean, he's a leader, and when he takes that ball, his mindset is, I'm going to finish this game, and to go out there and have that desire and his dedication and just his ability. He may be, he may look heavy to people, but what an athlete. His footwork is tremendous, a great fielder, and he's just been a great asset to this team, in addition to this team, not only on the field, but off the field also. So it's been a joy to have him. Yeah,
I mean, he's got the history of a World Series competition, and so he's been there, so he's got it. It's got to be a good influence on the younger players.
Yeah, and then just the way he goes about his job out there on that field, all the younger guys look at him and really admire him.
And it doesn't matter if he gets in trouble early. He's going to.
Yeah,
it seems like the longer the game goes, till the latter innings, he gets better.
He just doesn't panic, and like everybody, he's going to give up his runs and his hits and stuff like that. But he keeps you in the ball game, and he gives you those innings, and it's just he's been remarkable.
I won't keep you too long because you've got a lot of things to worry about. You're right in the middle of a wild card chase here and just 2 games out, so it's got to be an exciting time.
Yeah, it is, and it's going to be tough. We've got a tough road ahead of us, but so don't the other teams that are battling for this. So it's going to be exciting. I think it'll go right down to the wire, especially because of all the teams playing each other and in the wild card race and everything. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully we can put together a real good stretch over the next 30 days or so, and take it to the wire.
Now, I was disappointed last year when I saw you had signed with Toronto. I said, oh heck, he's not. I figured you were the next pitching coach here at the Expos, and I saw you had signed for the Syracuse coach with Toronto. But how did that happen that you did end up here? Because you worked for the Expos last year at AAA.
Well, it's been, yes, and I was with the Expos for 4 years at AAA, and with the situation that this club is in, the ownership and all that, the decisions on who comes back and where you're going to be and all that kind of stuff is taking place a couple months later than normal baseball. August, people start looking for jobs. They start knowing whether they're going to come back. If an organization doesn't feel they're going to hire you back, they tell you, go ahead, look elsewhere. We're probably not going to have you come back. So everything starts in August, in early September. Well, the way the situation is, they don't know where they're going to be, their budget, their this, their that, until our contracts run from the end of October, okay, through for the calendar year.
Right.
They don't start January 1st or whatever. So everything is, guys are all signed and everything by that time. And I really hadn't a set contract. I had really nothing to say, okay, I'm going to be here, 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 and this
Right.
is my contract and the money I'm going to make. And an opportunity came up to be in Syracuse instead of Edmonton. Even if I was going back with them to Edmonton, they wanted me back, it would have been out in Edmonton where my family's on the East Coast.
Right.
And I could have worked in
Syracuse is a lot
Syracuse.
closer to
2.5 hours as opposed
George,
to
right.
3 days. You know, so I couldn't turn that opportunity down, you know. And so Toronto was nice enough that even though they did give me that job, and I was thankful for them, you know, giving me that job, they were nice enough to let Montreal talk to me and, you know, and take me away from Toronto. So
So
it worked out well for me, you know, and that was how that all happened right there.
it's great, you know, and you must feel you're kind of back home when you're here, though, huh?
Yeah, I do. You know, when you spend 10 years, your first 10 years of your career are spent with the Expos, it's kind of like family, you know, and you still see people you knew from the very beginning, you know, in the front office people and stuff. And so it's like it's home, you know, it's like it's family and everything. So when you come back to that team that you started with and your roots are in and everything, it does feel like it's family, and it just feels like it's natural to be here, you know, in this stadium. So.
Yeah. Now, did your family come up to Montreal when you're at
Yeah,
home?
they get,
or?
well, the girls are older now, and it's tough to get them out of work or do around their friends and stuff like that, but they do come up and periodically throughout the year, and I get home for a couple days also, you know, on off days when we're not traveling and we're spending them here. So yeah, it's nice to be, it's convenient to be close.
Yeah. Okay, well, we appreciate you taking all this time. You've got a full day, and
Yeah, and
You guys-
interesting night to have us.
yeah, well, after last night,
Yeah.
you know, I wasn't here last night, but I was sure listening to it on the radio, and what a exciting game that must have been to witness.
Yeah, it was tremendous. It was a lot of fun. It's kind of starting to bring back the 91 August and September with the Braves, you know, when we were in that pennant race there. I mean, that was a tremendous month and a lot of fun, and we had a lot of good comeback victories and stuff like that, and some big sweeps and some big games on the road and stuff, battling LA and Cincinnati and those teams. So it was a lot of fun then, and it's hopefully it'll continue here and everybody will get to experience that.
Yeah, just 3 games that come to my mind that happened here in the last 10 days or so was the one where Wilkerson had the walk-off grand slam, then the Monday night's game where you get jumped out to a 12-0
Right.
lead, 9-0 lead, and win 12-1, and last night to come back from an 8-0, then a 10-3 deficit.
Yeah.
You know, this has got to be exciting.
Yeah,
you know.
it is, and it's like I said, hopefully we can continue on that and get something going, for some momentum going for this road trip coming up, because we have struggled on the road, but hopefully the guys can overcome that and we can put something together.
Yeah, it was just if the team with the best home record won, you guys would win it.
Yeah, that's right. But we got to play on the road. So.
Okay, Randy, I
Okay,
really
you're
appreciate you
welcome.
taking the time.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right, thanks a lot. Peter Keenan brought you along because you were familiar with the St. Clair family, and as a baseball umpire, you've certainly been an observer of baseball for a long time.
Yes, I umpired for his father, and when his father was coaching the Whitehall Legion team, and Randy was pitching and catching for them at that time, and it always was a pleasure. And also that Randy's father, Ebba, was at one time coached in our neighboring community of Osable Forks.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Caleb, can you see Frank Robinson back there? We want to make sure we can see Frank. Why don't you come just here closer to me here, so Caleb Castine on the camera. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. Don't want to leave him out. Yeah, this was not Ausable Valley Central School. This was the Ausable Forks School.
The old Ausable Forks High
This was
School.
in the 40s, right?
Yes, late 40s, just before he went up to the majors. He spent his winter coaching in Ausable Forks.
So he would play minor league ball, and of course their season's a little shorter than the major league season. Then he'd coach a year or two there at Ausable Forks, and he learned enough there to take him on into the big leagues. And
Yes.
I never realized what happened to his career, but I was enlightened today when Randy said he was beamed and it messed up his equilibrium and took him out of the major leagues.
Yes, I didn't remember that either. Of course, that would have been roughly 50
Almost
years ago.
Yes.
Yeah. And but Ebba was a big man, and he was quite an athlete.
He one of the few, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago I was here with Jim Schutz, that most of the players we've gotten from the North Country have been pitchers that made it to the big leagues. Ebba St. Clair made it. He was a catcher, but you just heard Randy talk about his father deciding that, since he couldn't make it as a catcher with his hitting, he'd move over into pitching. It's just an amazing story that after a month and a half, that he would suddenly become a major league caliber pitcher like that. That's an interesting story.
Yes, it certainly is. I never realized that either. Of course, probably our most famous pitcher, who was back in my era, was Johnny Padres, who was right from a neighboring town of Whitehall in Weatherby.
Yeah, in the town of Mariah, and Padres, of course, the hero of the 1955 World Series, and Randy just talking about his father being on the '54 Giants team that went on to the World Series, and unfortunately he wasn't able to play in that World Series. And then the following year, the Dodgers won the pennant and defeated the Yankees in the World Series. So they didn't do that too many times, though, did they?
No, that has not happened. The Yankees seem to have quite a dynasty.
But you think of other pitchers. Randy mentioned Claude Raymond from up here in St. Jean-sur-Richelieu, and I know Ron Pichet grew up around here next to Montreal, and you got Deshays from Messina. You got Browning, who went to Malone for a short period of time. You had Palmer and LaPointe from Glens Falls. Just seems like when we get a major league caliber pitcher in our neck of the woods, they're pitchers.
Yes, it definitely is. I can't remember any others myself that were other than pitchers that have made it and or even got high up in organized ball.
Yeah, outside of Randy's father, Ebba. Yeah. You've been out of umpiring how long now, Peter?
7 years.
7 years.
7 years, I guess, yes. And I umpired for about 45.
45 years.
Yeah.
You were just a youngster when you started then, huh?
Yes, I was. Shortly after I got out of service.
Did the game change, or was it pretty much the same from one era to the next?
Well, I think that the caliber of the athletes has improved, which a lot of it is to the training. They train much more strenuous and better training than they used to. Yes, I think the game has improved.
I think for the kids who play the sports, because they get weight training now and other things, I'm going to interrupt this. We got a group interview going on next door to us here. We're going to interrupt that thought and put Caleb to work over this way.
No problem.
All right.
The last game in San Diego kind of woke us up. And, we're a big part of this team. Our pitchers are going to keep us in pretty much every ball game, and we got to score some runs.
Would you be surprised if you swept this series?
Well, this is a tough ball club we're playing, and we know every game's going to be a tough ball game. And we came out and got up to a big lead the first night and kind of gave us some breathing room. But these two games are going to be tough, and we got to come ready to play tonight and take care of tonight's business.
It's a great way to start off this stretch with the Phillies and the
Oh, definitely. It seems like in the every series we played, the last 9 or 10 series, we always get beat the first game or so, and we're always struggling to try to win the series and putting a lot of pressure on ourselves. And it feels good to get the first 2 out of the way, and it assures us a split. But that's not what we want. We want to come out tonight and secure the series win, and hopefully tomorrow get the sweep. But tonight's our main focus.
Game's over and done with, but what does it bring into tonight's game for you guys?
Well, hopefully, continued confidence. The last 3 games we've been swinging the bats really well, and to come back from a deficit like that last night is very exciting. And it's hard to explain. You don't see that too often, and for us to have that many quality at bats and put a lot of guys on base and get that many big hits from everybody in the lineup. Just wasn't one guy. It was everybody in the lineup contributed last night, and the bullpen came in and did a great job at the end. So, it was all in all a team effort.
You guys were down 8-0, and then you got on base to lead it off, if I'm not mistaken. And right away the crowd got into it. Were you a little bit surprised? It was 8-0, and you get on base, and it seemed like the fans thought that you got something going there already.
I mean, that was I know something I've never been through here at the stadium. We were down 8-0, and the fans were still cheering and very boisterous and very loud. And it seems like it was a very tight ball game, and it kind of. To me, it seemed like our energy level just went up a little bit, and they were a big part of that win last night, bringing us back, and hopefully they, we need their help the next 2 nights too. So hopefully they come out the next 2 nights. But they were a big part of our victory last night.
Thanks. Do you remember a comeback like this in the minor league, whatever?
Okay, we are back. I believe that was Brian Schneider, but don't recognize them almost without their numbers on, but I think that's the catcher, Brian Schneider, and he was talking about last night's game, and I don't know if people watching this will remember that. Hopefully they will. I know people in Champlain will, but people in Plattsburgh viewing area, the Malone viewing area, this will be on a couple weeks after the fact. But last night the Expos were trailing 8-0 early, and trailing 10-3, and they went to 10-4. Then they get to the 7th inning, they scored 7 runs to make it 11-10, and went on to a 14-10 victory. But a tremendous come-from-behind win following a game that they won 12-1. When they won 12-1, it was 30,500 people. Last night there was 12,500, so not as big a crowd, but just as noisy probably. So if you and I were talking on the way in, if those 2 games don't get some backsides in the seats tonight, nothing will, because they're right here. The 2 games, as we're taping, there's 2 games out in the wild card race. It's an exciting time for the Montreal team.
And at this point, Montreal only has 7 games left here. Is that what?
They've got 2 left in this series, and then after that, they've got only 6 games remaining. They've got 21 on the road. Not really on the road, because 6 of those are in San Juan, and those are called home games. But actually, they've got 21 of the next 27 after they leave here tomorrow that are going to be out of Montreal. And they have the best, I think only Colorado was ahead of them. Now they've won 2 since then. So they've got either the best or the second best home winning record in the National League. Unfortunately, with Guerrero being out for 50 games, and with the San Juan mix thrown in there, they've had a lot of trouble winning on the road. They're pretty good in San Juan, but it just extends that road trip out into all of a sudden a 3-4 week trip instead of a 10-day trip, because they go on the road for 10 days, go to San Juan, it's considered home, and they're on the road again for 10 days. So instead of being on the road for 10 days at a time, they're on the road for 21 days, 30 days at a time. So it's affected their away record, and that's unfortunate. But the 2 games out, you figure with Guerrero in the lineup, 5 games out of the 50 he missed, they would have won. You have to
5 additional. Yeah. Yes, I think that's, and there's no question.
Being conservative.
And there's no question of being on the road and having a split home between here and San Juan. It's got to be very tough. And I believe, wasn't it the players' union said that they wouldn't allow it? They wouldn't allow it for next year, and we can understand that.
Yeah. Yep. Caleb's watching some of the batting practice right now. Not sure that's Vasquez or who it is that's taking batting practice right now. This tape's about to be full, so we're gonna stop for a moment and we'll put in a fresh tape in there. We'll be right back with Mr. Peter Keenan.